Welcome to the Peter Garrett YouTube channel, where we speak all things education and politics. I'm Greg, this is Peter Garrett. Peter held an open scholarship in politics and economics at Oxford University. He was a speechwriter for a prominent member of the House of Lords. He was also a speechwriter for a cabinet minister. Peter is currently a senior academic coach, and he deals with the rigours of Oxbridge entry. Today we're here to talk about Farage and the Reform Party. So I'd like to start by asking Peter, is Farage and the Reform Party the most exciting development in the 2024 election?
Well, they've certainly been getting the majority of the coverage. I might myself have made an argument about George Galloway also being an important feature of this general election, but it appears that legacy media have airbrushed him out of history on this occasion.
Keir Starmer's problems just got 100 times more serious.
Certainly when Farage took the reins again as leader of Reform, the impact on the opinion polls was instantaneous. And I do think it's going to be very interesting to see the rollout on Thursday this week.
And then Farage is often referred to as having lived out the Mandela effect, because we've never seen him in the House of Commons. In fact, he's only ever been in the European Parliament. And to some people, this might be confusing because he has been a political figure of our times.
It is astounding to many people that Farage has never been in the House of Commons. He's actually tried on 7 occasions, 5 general election defeats, 2 by-election defeats. Many people just find that strange. He's been making so much noise in the British political landscape for such a long time. How is it possible that Clacton might be his first point of entry into the House of Commons?
And Farage is, we see, happy to step into a political challenge. In fact, the BBC gave a lot of coverage to what Farage said about NATO poking the bear. So I'd like to ask, is Farage actually being courageous?
I think on that issue, he is being courageous because the dominant narrative has been crafted by NATO and by the Western leaders. And he found himself in this area saying something that was directly opposed to the dominant narrative. And he's got historical context on his side. 10 years ago, Farage predicted that Putin would eventually be caused to invade Ukraine.
I was the only person in 2014 who said there will be a war in Ukraine.
When the 2014 elected government in Ukraine was undermined, potentially by a lot of American subversion, Farage called that out. And so he was the only person who said it then. He's the only person who's saying it now. Courageous, yes.
And Farage has been known to survive difficult situations. In fact, viewers might not know that once he actually walked away from a plane crash.
Yeah, he walked away from a plane crash. A light plane crashed in a field. He was injured, but he didn't lose his life. Different cohorts, different groups have speculated about the meaning of that. Was he targeted? Perhaps his impact on the Brexit debate was annoying some very powerful figures and they didn't want him to survive. Or was the plane crash just another example of perfect product placement? When Farage first emerged in British politics, he always had a pint in one hand and a cigarette in the other. That seemed a little bit too like advertising agencies speak to me. Could we be cynical enough to think that the plane crash was also stage managed? The jury's out.
And Farage and Reform have got this really interesting funding story where they were being offered 100,000, but the donor in fact upped it to $1 million. And the question we've got for you, Peter, is who is Aaron Banks?
Well, Aaron Banks was a successful businessman who became interested in politics over a decade ago. And Aaron Banks was famously offering to give Farage 100,000. And then David Cameron said, I've never heard of Aaron Banks. And that turned out to be a bad move by David Cameron. Another bad move calling the referendum was a disastrous move for David Cameron. But when Aaron Banks heard he'd been insulted in this way, he didn't give 100,000, he gave 1 million.
They call me nobody, you know. Now he knows who I am.
And that has helped to drive the Farage brand in British politics.
And here we are today with politics all over the globe. In fact, on both sides of the Atlantic right now, there's political campaigning is in full swing. And people have been likening Farage to Trump, calling him the UK equivalent to Trump. What do you say, Peter, about this?
I think they do both occupy that populist space. They're also both iconoclastic. They like to break things in front of audiences to make an impact. It's no secret that Farage is a very good friend of Donald Trump. In fact, in the last electoral cycle in the US, Donald Trump had Farage as a keynote speaker at one of his main rallies. And so I think there is a view across the net or across the pond, and what happens here on Thursday will be taken on board by the Republican machine and by the Donald Trump machine in particular. And maybe we'll see an emergence of a transatlantic agreement between these two populist politicians at some point in the future.
And Peter, so if Nigel Farage was open to advice as we approach the general election, what advice would you be giving Nigel Farage?
I think I'd back away from saying I want to be the leader of the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party at the moment is a very damaged and divisive brand, and it's better for Farage to concentrate on his own messaging instead of talking about future glories. Here's a man at a pivotal moment in his own political career. I do believe he will win in Clacton, and I do believe that he will have an impact on Tory politics, not just on Thursday, but for the next decade.
Thanks to everyone for listening. Take the time to like and subscribe so that we can provide you far more education and politics, giving you the insights that you know that you require to be well informed in this political maelstrom today.